Well. Thursday, March 27th. I've been so excited about this series, Jesse. So good to have you, man. How you been? I know you're in
Likewise.
Tampa. You're kind of doing the travels at the moment. People
Yep.
are coming in, and we're going to get started here. The chat
Yeah.
should be open for everybody. We totally want the heckling. And where are you coming in from, folks? I'm for a random week this year, just hanging out at home, but traveling a bunch this year. So
All right. So that's odd. You're at home and I'm on the road.
I know.
That's about as
Go
opposite as
figure.
you can get.
You're the guy that's usually, working with the cows, and so
Right. Yeah. Yeah. For those of you that don't know, as you join, we have a little hobby farm. So we've got some beef, cattle, and chicken. And so I'm usually at home dealing with those, working over Starlink. So I happen to be in Tampa for the CyberFox event today, and Luis is back on his homestead.
all right, cool. Well, I love starting promptly. We have some people joining us here, and it looks like we may have reached the stability in joiners as we got going here. So let's kick this off. Well, first of all, welcome everybody. I have the pleasure of welcoming Jesse Miller to this webinar series. Jesse is the founder of PowerPSA, but also the creator of PowerGrid, which is an incredible vCISO development system that helps MSPs really work through the process of building out that vCISO practice and function inside of their MSPs. Jesse, anything more you want to say about your background? What got you here?
Yeah, so I was the MSP, or I was the CISO of an MSP for over 10 years. And this is really born out of all the different struggles and pain points that we went through building out our cybersecurity and vCISO practice. And so really what I like to say is, in a sentence, my mission is to help MSPs crack the code for profitable vCISO programs.
Perfect. I'm Luis. I'm along for the ride. Mostly, I was an MSP owner. I never got to the point of doing vCISO, and I was kind of at the tail end of the real transition into a cybersecurity mindset, cybersecurity leadership starting to happen in the industry. And that's about the time that I sold my shop. So I didn't get a chance to really put my hands into that fire directly as an MSP, but I've now had the chance as a vendor with a few different places, IT Glue, Enable, Scalepad, to be in the front lines of how MSPs are going to market with this and seeing across the board, across different types of MSPs and sizes, how they're doing it. And so the whole point of this series is really to try and help you guys start thinking through how to do this. We know that it's going to be a critical part of your go-to-market very quickly here. The need is coming. It's already here in many cases, but it's becoming more and more broad across all the various types of MSPs. And so we wanted to build a series that helps you pragmatically approach building out this vCISO program inside of your MSP. So today is a bit of a startup session. We're going to set out the layout of this entire series. We have 6 episodes in total, and today's number one. And so today we're covering what is a vCISO, what do they do, where do they come from, who pays for risk management, and how to start thinking about getting started. And so as far as the structure is concerned, we're following a little bit of Jesse's overall roadmap that he has for PowerGrid, which is this idea to start building the consensus internally that you want to do this, evaluate your ability to do that, your people capability and capacity, your client's attitude and mindset towards all of these things. And that's kind of where we are today. And the future sessions will address all the remaining parts of the roadmap, which is to getting you into planning, implementing, developing, iterating on that build out of the go-to-market motion, launching your program finally, and then finally, obviously, operating that for the longer term. Now, this series is not going to get deep into the practicalities of the day to day because we only have 1 hour sessions each time. But this is where Jesse's program, PowerGrid, comes in play. And it'd be great for you guys to check that out if you're thinking about needing some help, or if you'd like to understand how to go to market better. This is actually one of the reasons we decided to pitch Jesse on this webinar series. Is we know that MSPs sometimes will buy a control map, and we say, I got to start doing GRC, and then they get stuck immediately because there was no plan. It's a lot more difficult, a lot different kind of work to get started. And so I think having the support of a peer group like PowerGrid has would be awesome to keep you going. Jesse, anything else to say on the peer group and the program, and why people should be thinking about it?
Yeah, I think that's it. We've really built an amazing community of people who are focused on security professionals building vCISO programs and really having risk-led structure to their programs. Excuse me, I have housekeeping tapping on my hotel right now. Yeah, I'm still in here.
Yeah, one of
No,
the
thank
the
you.
beauties of being on the road. I love it.
So that was timely. So to get back to that is, not only like, yes, templates, systems, you'll see, I think people that are in the know of like the lean structure, you'll see a very lean type structure to this roadmap, right? But that's only part of it. It's when you go to apply any system, it's like, how does it work for my MSP? I'm going to have problems. I'm going to have specific sales discussions that I need to bounce things off, or how are you building your pitch decks? How are customers responding to this? So having a sounding board to synthesize all that for your business and really fit it to your org DNA, as I like to say, is I think really important as you to shorten the runway and accelerate your time to market on these. It's a complicated service to deliver, right?
Yeah, it really, really is. All right, so today we're focusing on that initiate and evaluate. What I'd like to do is maybe kick us off with a poll to try and understand who's in the room and what are you guys thinking about in terms of the vCISO function inside of your businesses. And so here's the first poll. Which of these best describes your MSP's current approach to compliance and vCISO services? I apologize in advance if we miss some of the things that you might be, stage wise in your MSP thinking about today. But it'll just help us understand a bit of. We'll share the results in a minute, a bit of the audience and how to massage the conversation as we go along. We'll give it a couple more seconds here. Interesting. Right away, it's coming in. The options. We'll share the survey poll in a sec.
There's usually a pretty good spread these days, but I'm interested to see who's on today.
Yeah, there's a good spread. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end that, and we'll share these back to everybody.
There you go.
Exploring, a lot of exploring, some basic compliance assessments, and we see this a lot in tools like Lifecycle Insights, where you can build basically a replica of some cybersecurity framework assessments to get started with those, incorporate them into a bit of the QBR motion and so on. So we are
Yeah.
seeing a lot of that initially. When MSPs get serious about deploying a compliance as a service function, um, those tools often fall short. They need to move into GRC platform. There's a lot more work, a lot more data that needs to be tracked consistently. So this is where something like Control Map comes into play.
Yeah. I just want to point
Any
out,
any surprises here, Jesse?
yeah, not surprised, but I think our audience might be surprised about this a little bit, is we have a third of the attendees today are currently developing a vCISO practice, right? So, I mean, if you asked that question even a year ago, I would say you'd probably get less than 10%,
Yeah.
right? So I think, everybody's seeing that this is the time and customers are asking about it, which we'll get into. So I wouldn't say surprises. Maybe a surprise for me is currently scaling our vCISO offerings above 10% in the respondents. So that's really great for me to see. And it's more confirmation that as an industry, we're on the right track here.
Yeah. And I think this is an interesting place to, even if you're already scaling or have a mature practice, it's a great place to validate whether your go-to-market has, the right elements to it and you're doing the right things to scale it properly. Because I think this is the challenge of scaling anything is you get to the point where it's like, oh, we kind of made some wrong turns before getting to this spot. Now you have to kind of undo some things, and
Yeah.
that reduces the operational maturity. You have to restart on a lot of those things. Interesting results. All right, so now that we have that information, let's start with the what. I think this is maybe a big topic for debate. I've seen a
Fight,
bunch of
fight.
I've seen so many of your LinkedIn posts of like, what the hell is a vCISO? And people love putting their own definitions on things, but walk us through this definition here. A vCISO is an executive-facing fractional resource who collaborates with leadership to translate cyber risk into clear business terms, align cybersecurity strategy with organization goals, and ensure its effective execution. How did you
Yeah, so
land
that
at
is
this?
the that is the technical definition, right? So one thing I do want to point out though is it's executive facing. So this does not always have to be an executive level resource, right? We need somebody who understands how to interface with executive leadership and be their translator. You know, I compare this sometimes to a skill set that maybe an executive assistant might have. Is they understand how they're to work with executive teams and what executive teams need to know, and so they're a translator. So the TLDR, maybe the way you explain it to your clients, is you are a cyber translator for the business to help them get clear on cyber risk decision making. And then you will go action that to make sure that the decisions are performed to their utmost.
Hmm. The focus on the business terms piece here, this is increasingly important in so many aspects of the work that MSPs do, not just vCISO, but we're seeing this very, very big lift and shift to, hey, I think we're got at the point now where we commoditized everything that we thought was special, and clients don't care anymore, and we have to rethink the relationships, our go-to-market on the engagement model, all these pieces that are kind of driving a bit of this move to customer success, which we've been talking about a bunch. And this applies equally, I think, to vCISO. Like, if the relationship is not there, if the approach to how you have those conversations is really upside down, it's just kind of a technical thing, you're going to maybe fail very hard on this stuff. But what's your take, Jesse, on some of the engagement model piece?
Yeah, I think that's right. Is this has to be starting with business. So you need some business acumen, or you need to get some business acumen, and start asking your clients those types of questions is where to start. I mean, simple stuff like it, not even from a cyber frame, but where, like, talking to the executive team, where do you all see the highest areas of risk in the business? Like, let's put technology out of the window. Where are your highest areas of risk? Okay, is it cash flow? Is it growth? Is it we have to make certain growth levels for either our holding company or our stakeholders, or we just have organizational goals that we want to hit? These are all just business outcomes. So we have to say, okay, those business outcomes, where does technology pose risk or enable that? And then we can start distilling that into what does our cyber plan look like? And so then when you tie those terms to a business leader, a business decision maker's outlook, they're able to say, okay, now I understand how this technology actually affects what I want to do with the business, and I'm able to make a better decision because I now have made it into dollars and cents and a business outcome, right?
Yeah. And you know what's funny? I hear all the time MSPs will come after having a conversation of stating that important need. They'll say,
Yeah.
"Well, we work with a lot of smaller clients, and a lot of them don't even have business goals that they can articulate clearly to us in that sort of back and forth."
Yeah.
Or maybe you're in a situation where you've kind of mm, given QBR or VCIO function to more junior people because you're trying to pull out of the business a little bit yourself or the day to day. And so that
Right.
kind of ends up, you end up relegated to less executive people in that conversation or in that relationship. And these are all challenges that are real. On the piece that people say, oh, well, we don't have any business goals. We actually have a cool little chart that the VCIO University guys put together
Yeah.
of four categories of business goals that you can start to attach your projects to. Like, never mind vCISO for a second, but all the other stuff that you normally do to get the clients in that mindset. And so if I didn't have that included in the folder with download links and takeaways, but if you're interested in that, send a note in the chat and that'll prompt me to make sure we put that in the folder or send that to you directly. It's a great
Yeah.
thing to start incorporating into all your, future project pitches or your QBR conversations and so on.
Interesting side note here. I don't want to get too off track, but I'm actually doing my panel this afternoon at the conferences with Chris Ryan from vCIO University on exactly how does that business strategic goal VCIO piece play in with the vCISO piece. So
Perfect. Yeah,
Perfect
we've been
coincidence there.
chatting with Chris and Jim a bunch too, and developing some ideas for how to talk more about these things. Um, we'll share, Darren. Some of you are chatting with the host and panelists only. Remember, there's a little button that you can click to chat with everyone, so the chat is a little bit more dynamic and everybody's included. We will be sharing shortly a link into the chat with all the folder where all the downloads are. We just don't want to distract you just yet. So, anyways, let's define the vCISO. Who does this work, and like what is the role exactly? So, Jesse, talk us through this a little bit.
Yeah, so well, we start off with like what does a vCISO actually do? That kind of will tell you the who, right? But what they do is they're acting as this primary interface for the client's cybersecurity strategy. And we just alluded to that with what a vCISO is. But basically, they're ensuring that the risk management and the compliance, if it's needed, because you don't have to have compliance to work cybersecurity strategy with an organization, right? It's ensuring that all those things align with their business goals. So who can do this? I think is what we're going to unfold in the next slide here.
Yeah. So, with that quick backgrounder, I think it'd be cool to do one more poll, just understand because a lot of the challenges MSPs haven't identified who is going to kind of step into this role or who's maybe
Yeah,
ready for this role, and what's coming next is some ideas on what a job description for this looks like,
yeah,
how to hire for it. How you might do a personnel plan internally if you need to move somebody from an existing role into this vCISO role. And so
yeah.
let's bring up the next poll. Um,
So as you think about this poll, what we just said is who's somebody that can talk to clients, explain complex technology, distill complex technology conversations down into a more easily digestible format for clients to understand, and then who can go liaise with the internal technical teams to make sure that gets done. That's a good way to think about who that role could be if you don't have it today.
all right, so hit that poll, everybody. If you see it on your screen, we're looking to get at least 75% participation, so we have a good sense of what the group is feeling or thinking. And I understand like where you tap into your personnel or your people for this role is going to largely depend on the size of your business.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that's an interesting dynamic because in many cases you might have to move somebody into a slightly different role or you give somebody another job title on top of the three others that they already have. So it can be tricky, right?
I'm chuckling because it's like, oh, everyone's like, oh man, all the sorts of turmoil we're going to cause doing that. We'll show you how to navigate that.
All right. Some people are, maybe put us on and then are responding to email or tickets or printer fixes. We only have 64% participation, but it appears to have stalled there. So let's end the poll and I'll share back the results and we'll see what this looks like. Yeah, so people primarily in a existing technical lead or a VCIO is kind of who might get
Mhm.
tapped for this. And does this is this consistent with what you typically see, Jesse?
Yeah, yep, yeah. You typically see, and we'll talk about this in the archetypes a little bit, but most common is a TAM or technical lead type role who is good talking to clients and clients actually listen to, right? Providing some of those consultative services already has the trust of the client leaders. And then, of course, the vCIO. If you've developed that program and you have good vCIOs, we'll talk about that a little bit too. But there might be one or two that are, hey, I want to get into the security thing, and I want to start going that way. So they're already doing that with some of their clients. So that's pretty standard from what I'm seeing out there.
All right. So this is a good point to maybe transition into what a vCISO actually does, and
Mhm.
we're going to actually drop into some of these other documents. We'll share the link in a minute, so you can grab these. And just a heads up, these are all starting points. They're not designed to be the final answer to all of these needs. You're going to have to go through and assess what specifically you need for your org and how you might plan for it. But it's a place to get started, and I find that helps just get the movement going. But talk to us through what the vCISO does.
Yeah, I think it's a really important point. Again, using your quote unquote org DNA and what your customer base looks like is going to drive a lot of these services. And whether you're heavy in one piece, lighter in the other, or you're not even doing it, certain things based on what your customers need. So listen to your customers, of course, right? But yeah, risk management. So at the end of the day, a vCISO is going to look at the technology landscape of the organization, their business goals, the business risks, and say, where does technology pose a risk to the business? And then what decisions do we want to make around that? So I think this is a really important thing to understand. Is I think as MSPs, sometimes we always think about we got to mitigate risk. That should be one of the last things we think about in a lot of ways. The four things you can do are you can accept the risk, you can transfer the risk, you can mitigate the risk, or and I'm blanking on the third one. Anyways, point being is that we want to see if we can transfer that risk, right? We want to see if we can maybe can we accept the risk and just to move faster in the business. And we say, okay, the cost of a control is not commensurate with actually the risk that it poses. So again, we want to create all these perfect outcomes in the technology, but I think as a vCISO, you have to understand risk and how does it apply to the business. So that's number one. And obviously there's regulatory compliance, right? We've got to make sure that we're keeping the business compliant because that is a risk to the business if we were out of compliance. The strategic security planning, working with the organization to game plan using all those things we just talked about and say, what can we afford to do? What makes the most sense for us to do? Building consensus with the organization to get a plan in place and start executing on that plan. And then preparing the organization from a personnel perspective. And then, of course, an incident response planning. I think that's one of the biggest things that a vCISO program can be instrumental for in your clients is actually building them a resilient incident response plan that helps them respond to an incident and shrink that downtime. Because if you can say, hey, we're going to take downtime from a ransomware event, and which is 2 weeks or whatever it is, and maybe we just stop the attacker when they get into a little section of the network, right? Because of our incident response plan, we've just created massive cost savings for the organization and reduce that risk. So probably a little bit deeper than we wanted to go because I know we have to keep moving here. There's a lot to say there, but I think those are the things that a vCISO is going to do.
Well, let me double click on that because I think the broad assumption in everything you just talked about is A, the customer needs compliance or understands it to some extent, and B, the MSP is doing some kind of CAS program currently to actually address it. But there's the whole spectrum of people, clients specifically, that they don't, in their industry or their vertical, have no need for compliance or no perceived need for
Yeah.
compliance. And are very, you're going to hit a brick wall trying to get them to understand why they even want it in the first place. So, what are you seeing in that other side of the spectrum, the clients that maybe don't need or have an industry requirement for compliance, but where MSPs are succeeding in getting them across the line to that mindset
Mm-hmm.
of like, hey, this is, our responsibility as a small business to try and raise the bar of our security baseline and standards.
Yeah, I think it goes back to that strategic security planning and resilience conversation. So we say, where are the areas of risk to the business? Here's where technology could trip you up. Here's where cyber risk can trip you up. Let's look at the dollars and cents of that, or let's look at the potential outcomes from that. Can you tolerate that? Is that inside your risk tolerance? And that's what the vCISO is doing in that last bullet, is that is security awareness and education at a leadership level. And then saying, okay, if this is outside your tolerance, if this is unacceptable, then we need to plan for ways to fix that. I'm seeing a lot of uptake in that, surprisingly enough, in the manufacturing industry right now. So CMMC has been driving that somewhat, but non-CMMC manufacturers are all of a sudden seeing that, hey, we have a ton of risk because we have operational downtime. And if the machines aren't working, we're not making money. And so we start talking in those outcomes and say, how long can you be down? How long can you not ship product? 2
Yeah.
weeks, a week, 3 days. Then we need to have some plans for that. And that's that strategic planning that works with when there is no compliance. It's dollars and cents at that point.
I was kind of having a bit of a moment yesterday with the product team because I had ChatGPT go do some deep research on MSP websites that offer leaving IT to us, forget about your IT, we'll take care of it, we'll handle it. And there's still hundreds and hundreds of these examples. And I think this is the thing that's so critical in how the mindset is changing, is
Yeah,
it's okay to outsource technology work, but it's not okay to outsource accountability. We've kind of been letting
right.
clients outsource this accountability,
I
or abdicating their responsibility and
it's
accountability around all these
yeah,
things. And we need to, this is why it's been difficult. We have to bring them back into the equation. They have to be part of the rescue. And they need to get involved with security leadership. This is a term you use quite a bit.
yeah.
Talk to me through the concept of security leadership and how that's different from the actual technical roles of the things we're doing for incident response. Matt had a good point that what the skills look like or requirements look like for incident response
Yeah.
versus the vCISO role might be very different. But I think the business conversation, the security leadership is very similar.
Yeah, no, and I want to clarify on that point is that the vCISO is absolutely not doing incident response activities, but they are helping build consensus and helping the organization develop an incident response plan and actually get that implemented and agreed to by leadership, right? So agreed there with Matt. And then the the piece with the business is that uh, we the vCISO has to be a consensus builder. That strategic security leadership, right, is talking with the business on the same side of the table. And people kind of cringe when I say this, but you almost have to have this mentality of good enough security, right? So we want to talk, and people don't like when I say that, but that's really the mentality and the shift as a strategic strategic enabler for the business. You're saying, hey, I get that we can't do everything. I would love that for us to do everything, and I think we should, but I understand that that's maybe not realistic. So let's talk about what we can do today to help shrink risk and start planning for the future and getting a game plan in place. And I think when you take that approach with clients and all of a sudden they realize, hey, you're not here to just try and sell me something. You're actually trying to be pragmatic and you care about my business and you actually understand my business and you're seeking to understand it and you're helping to seek me get better. And that becomes a really different strategic conversation than if, hey, you got a lot of risk, you got to fix it or you're going to get hacked.
Yeah.
Right?
There's one more question that I think is relevant. Ron in the Q&A said another issue we have is the clients don't want to pay for it, which leaves us out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's maybe some inputs into this that happen way earlier than when the client is ready to say, okay, yeah, let's move forward with that.
Yeah.
And I think one of them is to move to a program mindset instead of a project mindset.
Yes.
I see this all the time. We come in, we're like, we're going to do compliance, and you kind of pitch it like a project, and you talk about it casually at your next QBR. But there's a whole like shift that needs to happen around.
Yeah.
Hey, the business needs to feel accountable and responsible for driving a bit of that security baseline. But
Yeah.
but Jesse, what do you see MSPs doing successfully when clients are kind of just like, we don't want to pay for
Yeah.
this, we don't understand the need. Like, what is the magic trick there?
Yeah, this I'll tell you what works really well there. And this was a little bit of an unlock for us about 10 years back when we built our vCISO program and started pitching it and seeing what worked and didn't work is you really have to include it as table stakes for cybersecurity. And you have to talk about it that way. So it is a whole program thing, right? So you talk about your go-to-market motion with your current client base and you're trying to go back and talk to them about cybersecurity. What does that look like, right? Typically, we want to go talk to them and do a risk assessment and say, hey, we need to level set. You're not secure. We're not handling it. We're doing what you're paying us for, but there's a whole new world of attacks out there. So we need to show you where your risk is. So that's first baselining it. As part of the risk assessment, then we're saying, okay, you have 80% risk. And the outcomes from that level of risk are ransomware, business email compromise, these particular risks to the business. Again, that goes back to understanding what they're seeing as risks in their business, cash flow, operations, things like that. Okay, so that's number one. But then when we go to say, okay, here's what we can do to treat that risk, okay, we have this cybersecurity program, right? And we're recommending you do all these different things. And in the deck, I talk about, we show them okay, this is what we're doing for you today. Here's your IT services. You have your vCIO, they're like, your fractional IT leader. You have your architects, right? They're your sysadmins. You have your help desk. All these people, you work with them, right? Okay, over here now on a security program, we have the vCISO. They're the strategic leader for the cybersecurity program. You have your security architects and engineers. They're the ones building detections and doing those things. And then you have your SOC. Those are like your help desk they're doing the day-to-day detection. And so you may be outsourcing those. Obviously, you should to start, like the SOC and things like that. But then when you go to, hey, here's what we're recommending, there's just line items on the quote, and you're not saying what each one costs. You're like, here's your program, to your point, Luis,
Yeah.
right? Oh, you remember the vCISO. Okay, we're going to include vCISO services. They're going to meet with you and help you plan, kind of how your vCIO does for your technology plan. And you're going to have your detection. You remember so that's lining up with how you position the vCISO as the leader and necessary table stakes for the program instead of just a project. And when you talk about it that way, you don't show them what each one costs. It's part of the program. And they might say, well, that's too much. Okay, well, let's talk about what is in budget and what's most important. And that vCISO never comes off the table. They're always up there. And then, okay, we need to remove vulnerability management because that's way too expensive. Okay, we'll do scanning and we'll do detection. That'll at least get you a stopgap until we can afford that. So now you're planning, now you're in program mode, and it's just a rinse and repeat at that
Yeah.
point.
And we get into a lot of these details of like pricing and how to go to market in one of the future sessions.
Yeah,
There's a lot of just setup work that needs to happen ahead of time,
yeah.
namely finding somebody to do the work in the first place. And so we were talking about what a vCISO does and where they come from. And I want to switch over quickly to the job description template. Let me see if I can find it here. This guy. So here's a sample job description, and I think it's time to go drop the link to the folder in the chat. Otherwise, you might all start getting a little squirrely with me. Um, so here is the folder that has a bunch of these docs, and go grab it. We'll also follow up in the webinar follow up with the link to the folder and all that stuff. So, somebody had asked previously, what are the qualifications? Matt McGregor, thank you for that question. What qualifications are needed for an individual performing the vCISO role, the mandatory ones versus accreditations versus what are the recommended things? And so maybe we can talk through some of the things on this template here. Jesse, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so this is a great starting point. And again, this, when we look at a job description, we're looking at our wish list, right? I always like to write in my job descriptions at the bottom to get more candidates and better candidates that I can build. I say something like, we understand you may not have all of these qualifications, but what we're looking for most is somebody who is eager to learn and has some of them and is willing to work in to getting some of these other qualifications. So you widen your job search a little bit and it shows the kind of organization you are. So that's a little bit of a sidebar. But then all of these link exactly to what we talk about. And I think you'll see when we look at the personnel plan that we're going to show in a bit here, how they line up with that. So just core skills and traits, executive reporting and presentation, that's one that you really want to key in on, right? So technical acumen, you get two kinds of, if it's that technical TAM that can talk to people, they need more work with the executive presentation and not getting in the weeds, right? If it's that strategic vCIO type role, okay, they might need a little bit of certification track to understand risk better. And we'll show you guys what we recommend for that as well. But down here, here's what I see as like the PowerPSA recommended track to become like a full-fledged senior vCISO. This is what, if I had somebody that came in for a job and was competent and could talk well and seemed like they were pretty personable, and then they had these certifications and some technical experience, I would hire them, right? I mean, you can build anyone into that role. So CompTIA, I think the first two are more technical certs, but I like to see, especially non-technical vCISOs have those to understand what the SOC and detections look like and what they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. Past that, the CASP is a really good branch into the more strategic, higher level types of certifications. And then, I actually like CISM better than CISSP. I'm not knocking CISSP, but I think CISM is a little bit more focused on like management of a security program. So it's a little bit more focused there. And then there's the Carnegie Mellon CISO program is a really great program. Now that's something that you probably want to maybe pay for a practice leader or something. If you're thinking about building someone into this role, I think it's really important to invest in them. And, that's going to look good when you go talk to a customer, right?
Yeah, and back to that program discussion, I didn't think to include it here because we're kind of having a very casual conversation about these things, but I'll go throw it in the folder, check on it later. but it's Verizon has this payment security report that's super interesting. A lot of people are familiar with their big breach report that they do annually, but they also have a lesser known payment security industry report, PCI report. And one of the things they did in the last one, 2023, I think it was, is they kind of delved into a bit of like why programs fail. And one of the interesting stats they had was that people that do PCI assessments, 70% of people that pass it the first time around drop off the second time around that they do with the
Yeah.
assessment. So that's a big drop off. And they
Mhm.
started researching why this happens and trying to understand what's failing. And they got to a really interesting piece of sharing. Here's a ton of program building things that you have to be careful to avoid these particular challenges to make sure your
Right.
programs are successful. So I have a slide on that. I'll drop the link in the folder later on. And it'd be super awesome to consider, why programs fail as you're thinking about your
Yeah.
vCISO program build overall. Now let's jump
Yeah.
over to the hiring scorecard because I think just going out with a gut feel to the market to see who kind of fits the bill here is not enough. And I think it's important to have a plan for it. So let me go find the scorecard here.
Yep. While you're doing that, just one thing you were talking about the program, and that's one thing we see with why vCISOs are great sell to audit-driven companies is because they reduce that technical debt and that fire that comes up every year. So if you're talking to financial institutions, you say, hey, this is like dollar cost averaging for your technical
Right.
debt and your security program. They're going to understand what that is, right?
Which, continually reinforces the need to have that business acumen, right? You need to be able to speak in terms the customer understands,
Yeah.
and attach some of the pain to the way they understand things normally. So here's just a basic scorecard on, you use points here, and so that you have a little bit of a pragmatic approach to your search, and you might modify this, of course, to fit your specific requirements. Um, or where you want to start with your program. A lot of MSPs start with a much more basic approach to this. For example, we have a partner in the UK that they don't really talk to many clients about compliance per se, but they decided to use CIS IG1 as their baseline onboarding program for all
Mhm.
clients. And this is how they approach it internally. So they just did a little bit more of a understanding around IG1 and how everybody inside the company is kind of transitioning to a mindset around compliance. And that's just what they do. And when the clients are ready for a compliance discussion, they're kind of already in the program and it's easy to sort of skip and hop over to, well, let's move to IG2 and we need you more involved to reach those next two implementation groups, for example. But there's impossible number of permutations of how you might go to market if you're thinking about doing this in different ways.
Well, I always say, Luis, it's always better to have something to look at than start with a blank sheet of paper. And so take this and rip it apart and make it work for your organization, right?
Exactly, exactly. All right, so those are in the folder. Feel free to grab those. I'm going to switch back over to our presentation here. So where do vCISOs come from? And I think this is an interesting place because we maybe are used to just seeing the roles that we know and have in our MSPs at
Yeah.
our current, juncture, and have not considered other places where great candidates for these roles might be coming from that we need to go tap into. So tell me about your experience through finding people that are well suited for the vCISO role.
Yeah, that's the thing is you really have to be open and you really have to have a plan for developing that person into what they need to be from an MSP perspective. And so it's kind of like real estate, right? You're always going to make a compromise on location or price, right? And so you're going to find that somewhere in the middle here in any one of these roles. So yeah, let's start on the left. So former MSP engineers or security leads, those are great roles that really understand the technical side of things. And when it comes to actioning the security plan and getting a plan together and making it happen operationally, they're super solid. Where they're going to have some things to brush up on is probably the customer relationship management and that what I call professor perfection syndrome. Right. So they don't like that term good enough security. So they're gonna have to work on that a little bit.
And maybe also keep the program mentality top of mind as you go through these, because I think
Yeah.
an interesting thing that happens with engineers is they're very project driven, but not
Yes.
program driven, for example.
Yeah.
So that might actually be a challenge where they just don't have the stamina to sustain the effort very, very specifically over long periods of time, right?
Yeah. 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 That's a great point. Oh yeah, and then compliance and risk consultants, those are really good lead-ins. Not the struggles, but the things you're going to have to build in to those types of roles is they're probably not going to come from an MSP background, or if they do, they'll be more expensive. You're going to pay for that. So it's like, hey, you want a really good location with a house that doesn't need work, like that's going to cost more, right? But you might say that's actually, we want to get to market quick and we have the clients for it. So that's the easiest path. That's the shortest path. So we're going to do that. And that's a great approach. But then if you say, hey, we want to take a compliance and risk consultant who comes from just a consulting background, we're going to have to educate them on the way MSPs do things and that they can't just go make recommendations. They're going to have to go talk to the account team. They're going to have to talk to the technical team. They're going to have to make sure all the pieces of this department are willing and able to execute and get the timelines for that, because it's not like they're recommending that to the customer and saying it's your problem. It's actually their problem when they make the recommendation. So they're going to have to get some acumen there. And I think the same thing with IT directors or CIOs. Those you may have to then have some security training, right? Like they might need more training on actual risk programs and thinking about things rather, again, from, hey, this is a really cool technology. It's going to make the business work really well. Well, okay, pump the brakes a little bit. How does this affect our risk and how does this change our risk? And does it open us up to unnecessary risk? Is it worth it? So, developing those skills. MSSP or SOC analyst, these are more project type roles. You might get like a lead SOC analyst. And I've actually done this with previous employees of mine, a SOC lead or maybe a threat intelligence lead who wants to get more into the consultative side of things. They're going to need a lot of training on customer interface and the program management piece, Luis, like you said, right? Product or vendor consultants, I think technically they're going to need a little work. So there's going to be people that have a broad range of what's out there, but they're going to need to understand the risk piece of that a little bit. And then governance and audit professionals, they need you typically, you're going to have to help them move faster. They're not used to the pace of a consulting or an MSP environment. So you're going to have some struggles with, hey, you can't just take forever on this. And this isn't one thing. You got to multitask, you got to speed it up, So there might be some things to work on there. So there are things to think about with each one of those roles as you start to explore.
Yeah, I think it's just a place where you might look that you hadn't thought to look before. And I've seen so many people moving from the MSP industry into the vendor industry and kind of realizing it wasn't all that they thought it was going to be and looking to move back, but maybe into a different role because what they had before was pretty oppressive or difficult or whatever. And we are seeing sort of this big back to consulting movement overall, right?
Yes.
So but let's talk about this personnel plan, and let me bring that up. That's also in the folder. The personnel plan is really a bit of the pragmatic approach to how you figure out what you're going to need. And if you don't have the ability to hire externally, or you want to promote somebody internally, how are you going to move them along the process, right? Or how are you going to backfill the role that person had?
Yeah, I think that's important. So if like you're saying, hey, we're going to hire somebody, or we're going to use a consultant, an external consultant for right now, but we want to build a talent pipeline for this down the road. I mean, you're going to have better margins and you're going to have better cost control if you do that. So I think you put this, whether you hire for it initially or you're just building someone into it, it's important to put this mechanism in place. So we put in here what you saw in the job description. What are the primary responsibilities? Again, modify to what they're going to be for your organization, and then create a training plan. So let's flip over to that first. That's not the next one. But again, we have what you saw earlier, and then some incentive stuff and some things to think about. Again, this is like the PowerPSA, PowerGrid template best practice, right? Like I mentioned, if somebody had all these things, I'd feel pretty good about it. And you do see like we're incentivizing people as they get these certifications. I always like to see people like, hey, you want to, like, you get somebody that comes to you like, hey, I want to be in the vCISO program. I want to move to security. Okay, cool. Go get your Sec Plus and tell me when that's done. We'll start you in the program. So I want to see the incentive that they're going to go out and actually do that. I'm not going to help them with that. And if they go and like knock it out in the first month, I'm like, awesome. All right, this person is really into it. Let's start moving them through the program. Let's go back to our cyber roles here. Oh, I'm sorry, current personnel. Thank you. We already looked at that. So then this is where I want to list out the people and start getting the speeds and feeds of where they are in the organization now. Like you're going to see, being a security consultant, I'm doing an assessment on current state. So We want to see who they're reporting to, what their current job title is, department, do they have any cyber related skills or certs that we already know about? Like, we're evaluating where they're at in their current cyber trajectory. And then what's their primary job mission? What are their primary responsibilities? You're going to want to go talk to their supervisor and figure that out. Okay. And then are they the SME for anything? Like, are they your RMM? Are they helping with RMM duties? Are they your RMM SME, or are they your Microsoft Intune SME? Right. That's going to cause friction if you're going to a manager and saying, I want to take one of your better people and move them into a cybersecurity role. They're like, what are you talking about? Like, this is going to crush my department. Okay, that's great. Let's talk about what you need to make that happen. So we're going to talk about what has to change. Okay, I need a role to do this. I need a role to do this, or I need to switch this to somebody. I might need to hire someone. Okay, to the outgoing manager, you tell me what the responsibilities need to change because I don't want to make your life hard. I'm not trying to be a jerk. You tell me what's going to make this a complete wash in terms of moving this person over, and let's figure out what that is. Right. So the next thing is, in the next tab, we're going to talk about role changes. So this is what we're
And
going to define.
can I just say about the current personnel? I think one of the reasons why you want to be true to doing this exercise, don't just assume that you know this information, is that often the people that are working in the MSP have a very different perception of what things their primary responsibilities, opposed to what the owner thinks their primary responsibilities are. Because people adopt responsibilities over time, and sometimes these are unknown to management, right? So.
Yeah, and we're identifying risk in this. So we're thinking in risk terms again. Like, when I move this person, like Jenga, what piece am I taking out? That could cause the tower to topple, and let's avoid that, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to define then these different statistics, and this is just a spreadsheet, right? It's linked, and you'll see here in a second. So we're going to say, okay, those are the things that needs to happen. We need to transfer IT engineering. We wanted to get them to get these certs, or these are all the different individual things that need to occur. The next stage is then in the training plan, the next tab, we talked about current cyber skills. We're going to make some decisions like, okay, they're already working with our SOC provider, and they're the one that the security escalations go to. They're already doing like kind of incident response and stuff like that. So we're going to say, okay, maybe they don't need the CISO. They can start with the CAS because they already have these security technical skills. So we're going to start them there, and because they need the strategy. Then we're going to have them do that in the CISM. And so we say, if they're going to do that in the CISM, we'll consider them vCISO certified for our organization. Like, I love the idea of creating internal certs, like, Acme MSP certified vCISO, right? And you have to do these things. So it just creates stickiness and pride in what you're doing. And then in the last piece, then we're going to have a personnel plan. So you're going to say, here's the transfer of things that needs to happen. Here's the certifications they need to get. And we're all going to agree. We're sitting in a meeting here, right, with the employee, the outgoing manager, and the incoming manager, saying, this is our plan. And this is and this could include hiring. This could include all the things that we want to get to end state. Right. And so then we're just going to execute against that plan. We have consensus. You're seeing some of the motions we're going to be doing as a vCISO with risk and cybersecurity program inside the organization as well. So it's a good exercise to see how they navigate that as well, and to give them some insight there.
Tell me a bit about the maybe tendency to over-rotate in trying to immediately standardize the thing across all clients, because I think this is maybe a mistake that happens in various aspects of MSP business overall. It's kind of important, I feel, to be able to start a little smaller, iterate, find the best suitable clients for, the initial phase of these things, and work from there. But even as you develop the program, a lot of MSPs have what I call the VAR baggage. They're waiting for a client to raise their hand and say, hey, we need compliance, and then somebody gets thrown into the role and we figure it out from there. But so the over-rotation into standardizing is maybe a concern.
Yeah, I think so. What we talk about, and I think we'll talk about this in later episodes, is the client segmentation. Or are we talking about that today? Maybe we're talking about that today. Client segmentation exercise is, you want to identify the best clients for your organization, and that are going to be the easiest to talk to. Oh yeah, we are talking about that today. So there you go. what are the needs in your particular client base, right? And I see, this is, again, this is my take on it. And I'm happy to have discussions or arguments about these numbers here, but in general, let's consider this from like a professional services firm and what their needs are, right? So yeah, over rotating is a major problem. Do some segmentation and identify some clients that are going to be the best fit for these services and get some reps, right? And iterate and learn. It's that lean process again. It's
Yeah.
just in time operations. The professor perfection thing comes back to like, we're going to build this perfectly. And then you go find out that it's not what your client wants. So yeah, think about the SMB, right? They typically are more prescriptive. It's lower cost to bring a program to them because you can create almost a cookie cutter template across your entire client base. We know they're going to need these things. And if you're focused in on your ICP, it's even easier. We know they're going to need these things. We know their leadership teams typically have these problems. And basically what we need is somebody to tactically bring them along, give them the roadmap, and then help them execute it and keep them accountable to it, right?
Which is exactly kind of how this UK partner did the approach to the CISIG1 across their
There you
entire
go.
client base. Like it's just it made it very simple for them to adopt it internally because they actually went over rotated entirely and removed the client from the whole conversation. But I think where there is a conversation required, it does start a bit with the cyber openness, as you like to call it, right? Their attitude towards cybersecurity and whether they are willing to engage in the conversation. But this is your term. You use this a lot. Talk to me through this cyber openness
Yeah, this is a
mindset.
term that technical people hate because it's a subjective metric that I want to use an inductive exercise and talk to my account teams and people who are talking to the client and rate them on a rating of 1 to 4. And this is when we're doing segmentation, like we talked about. Who do we talk to first? Where do we identify opportunities? 1 to 4. 1 being they'll kick us out of their office if we bring up cyber. Like, I don't want to hear about cyber. We're not doing it. Don't bring it up again. That's a 1. Okay. And then there's the 4 that they're coming to you and be like, hey, we really want to get proactive about our cyber stuff. We have these requirements. We know we're not doing enough. What do you like? Bring us the solution. Like they're coming to you and asking you about things, right?
Yeah.
So that's on a scale of 1 to 4. You're going to rate those. I never like something right in the middle. That's why I say 1 to 4. It's you're either a 2 or you're a 3 on either side of that. And so you're going to go through a kind of a discussion on these accounts and say, where are we at? And if we don't know, we need to go talk to the client. So that's cyber openness.
Yeah, cyber openness, and this is something that came up in the VCI University materials. Chris Ryan and Jim Taralla were so kind to let me use this chart, which they have, which is the across the left is the client's attitude towards technology in general, because you got to remember a lot of your capability to go do in vCISO is going to stem from whether you have the right kind of conversations in the first place in your normal QBRs or VCIO relationship, or whoever owns a relationship with customers, right? And so there's the client's budget maturity level, how they think about that, the client's attitude towards security, which we were just talking about in the context of that cyber openness.
Mm-hmm.
And overall, like what kind of relationship the client is seeking. And you might have clients that are all over this spectrum, right? Some clients that are, you think of them as great clients because they talk to you and so on. But a lot of MSPs over the years have conflated depth of engagement with frequency of engagement. And one of the things that I see very regularly is that they've stopped talking entirely to smaller clients because, oh, they don't need us to do a quarterly business review. They actually need you to talk to them regularly. You just don't necessarily have to go as deep as you do with a bigger client. And so I would encourage folks to revisit whether you have confused frequency with depth and reinvigorate some of those conversations with the smaller clients, because you might be surprised where opportunities come out for just your regular QBR and project stuff versus actually, a client that is ready to go gangbusters and be ready for a vCISO thing because they have some big client they're trying to land that needs them to be compliant, for example. And so you would never know if you're not having the conversations in the first place. So I love this idea of like the TAM role is kind of in the earlier stage of the relationship where the attitude or the depth of relationship sought by the client is a little bit less The VCIO kind of moves into where the client really cares about budget, or they're starting to think more about it. They want to be involved with their technology. They're part of their own rescue. And then they're thinking about security, as you said. And then
Yeah,
ultimately that fractional CIO or CISO, where there's shared ownership and the client really is paying attention to these things. And the good news is you can help clients mature through this process
yeah.
if you're having the right conversations, right?
Yeah, no, I love this chart, and every time I see it, I'm like, it's saying exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah. So the segmentation, I think, is a good exercise to do just to identify where to start with clients. And you were
Yeah,
talking to this a little bit. We kind of jumped the gun on the
yeah,
topic before we had the slide ready. But walk through these again just to make sure we understand where to start. Not try to deploy a standardized program for everybody at once and feel like you
yeah.
failed.
I'm a big fan of like just-in-time operations. I don't want to spend a bunch. I want to get quick feedback loops, understand, and make pivots and adjustments, and then build that way. That's the way to. That's it's an agile slash lean type approach. So the core is I want to identify the easiest conversations first because I'm the least practiced, and I want to identify people that are going to work with me and give me some grace when I inevitably maybe put my foot in my mouth or don't say the exact right thing or have to go back and be like, hey, we found something new, and they're not going to crucify me for that. So but I also want to understand, like, have we not talked to our clients? And then I'm always asking why, like, okay, why haven't we sold? So these easy conversations or these clients we haven't talked to, like, why haven't we sold cyber? If it's just like we've been busy and we haven't talked about it, great. Okay, that's easy. We can go start there. But I also want to understand, like, who are our most, like, some factors of who I'm going to start with, or who are our most profitable clients and who are our raving fans. Because I might not want to go talk to my most profitable client first and fall on my face and ruin that
Yeah.
relationship. Even if they are a raving fan, we'll talk about this a little bit, but I want to find the clients first that are like raving fans and don't represent a real risk to my revenue, or a large risk to my revenue. And that'll be different for each MSP.
Yeah, and I think there's another piece here, which is the client conversations that you're having. They if if you can pitch them as a pilot in some situations,
Yes.
where those clients that will give you the grace, that will give you the time to kind of learn through the situation with them, you can reduce the perception of impact by talking about it like a pilot. Hey, we'd like
Yeah.
to test this out and see how you feel about getting more involved in these things. Help the
Mm-hmm.
client think about standing up a little security committee and get two or three more champions on their side involved in a
Right.
conversation about compliance or some security program or just overall security mindset type of things. I think those are the precursors to actually getting, the sales cycle working in your favor down the line.
Yeah.
So let's talk
Yep.
about this segmentation worksheet. Let me bring it up here real quick. Segmentation. I think it's this one here. So yeah, you're gonna go make a client list and go through a lot of these things. Let's talk through some of the key aspects of this spreadsheet here, Jesse.
Yeah, so you see the cyber openness factor there. There's also another thing we look at, and this gets a little into the weeds, so we're not going to talk about it today, but I like to use an Eisenhower matrix based on the two axes of cyber openness and results. So the results factor is how well are we doing for them, and how well are they doing for us? So we could be doing great for a client and they're not profitable and they're straining our resources. That's not a 4 on results. That might be a 2 on results, right? So again, these are subjective decisions we're making about after talking about. So if you expand the first plus sign above that F column there, Luis, that'll break out. This is how I want to have this conversation. Whatever you're using for a profitability metric, I want to see that for the client. That's going to vary depending on what you're doing. But then I want to understand where the primary revenue stream is coming from on the IT side and on the cyber side. So is it project? Is it fully managed? Is it co-managed? Just a quick temp check, because we're going to use these, like you saw in the last slide, we're going to use these to inform our GDM for net new prospecting, because we're going to find the intersection of like our really good clients that are really primed for this. And we're going to learn as we iterate, and then we're going to use that to inform our net new go-to-market. That's probably for another day, but then I want to have notes. Like, let's talk about the results factor. Let's talk about cyber openness. again, Louise, the owner may have one perception, the account team may have another. So we want to have this conversation about these clients and identify those two numbers.
Totally.
Past that, then I want to, you can expand those other ones. We want to get the basic meta about the industry. You know, who are our contacts? Are we talking to the decision makers as the contact? And then the next plus there is, you know, where are they located, where their site, with their productivity suite, all those things, right? But I do want to get, one thing I want to notice here is I do want to get their specialization in their industry. Because a lot of times I hear MSPs say, hey, we specialize in healthcare. Well, there's many subspecializations that are going to be better primed for the service than others. So, you know, specialty practices like a plastic surgeon are probably going to be better clients than, let's say, a dentist, right? So we want to identify, again, those intersections there. Then we want to list out on the right this current services that we're currently offering them and if they have any regulatory compliance. So we're going to create a heat map there. And now we can start to say, okay, let's sort by great or good results factors and priority or interested cyber factors. Can we identify any uniform traits there? And then we look at all those and we say, okay, the large majority of our clients are buying this from us in this sector. There's a couple that aren't buying all this stuff. Well, why aren't they? Oh, maybe we haven't talked to them about it. Okay, those are easy wins for, you know, just cyber tools and things like that. But we can go talk to these clients because they're taking most of our recommendations on tools about vCISO because they're security forward. And so we start to identify those easy clients to talk to about this.
Very powerful. And that kind of brings us to a bit of the pragmatic approach that this whole series is trying to help you think about, because I think we get stuck trying to design this perfect program right out of the gate, and it's tricky to do that. And so with that, we'll just throw up one last poll here real quick for people trying to understand what's actually preventing you from you know, doing or embracing a CAS approach instead of your MSP. And this kind of brings us to the end of today's session, and we're going to get a lot deeper on some of these things as we move along throughout that development roadmap. So jump in on this poll, folks, if you're still hanging out. I know top of the hour, we're probably going to lose a few folks, but happy to stay on here for a couple minutes while we round out the last few slides. We got about 40% so far.
Yeah, I figured we were going to run out of time today, but hey, we're trying to pack value in, baby.
I get to see the polling results as people are responding, and there are probably a couple of interesting results, but also not too many surprises. All right, 63% participation. Let's show these results. Check this out. Any surprises here, Jesse? The pricing and packaging is a concern. The time and resources is a big concern. Like, how are you going to make room to actually do this? This is where, like, starting small is a big part of, like, experimenting, right? Don't try and go do this immediately for all your clients. You're gonna hit a brick wall.
Yeah, we talked about switching resources previously, right? You don't have to put somebody full-time in the role day one. You can look at it and say, okay, for this pilot client, they're going to have to spend maybe half a day a week doing that. And they can stay in their old job duties. And so we just create a plan and we work through that plan, and they're getting exposure. You know, we're learning from the client, they're learning from us. You know, it's just you're creating that trajectory, you're creating momentum and motion, as I like to say, inertia. You're creating inertia in the program, and the inertia keeps going, and you just add to that flywheel then.
Yeah. So Control Map, of course, is the platform that we have at Scalepad, GRC platform that helps you do all this at scale, very well integrated into a lot of the tools that we use out there. I think more importantly is the support that you get in launching this program. And this is why we wanted to have Jesse out, because he works with MSPs all the time and understands where people are going to get stuck, how to break through some of those plateaus of resourcing, of challenges, of pricing and packaging. And so if you're considering this seriously, you might want to be in a program like the PowerGrid vCISO system to help you move that forward successfully and not sort of start strong, but then immediately fizzle out, right? And more importantly, we're going to keep diving into these things a little more deeply as we go along. So please sign up for the upcoming sessions. We'd love to have you on as we get deeper and deeper into some of these topics to try and outline a bit of, like, how to get this program off your back burner and into the front lines of your business. Folks, that brings us to the end. Jesse, this has been marvelous. Thank you for all the knowledge and templates and stuff that you're already dropping for everybody to leverage. And there'll be more. There'll be lots more coming in the future sessions, so be sure to sign up for that. I know you have to run over back to the CyberFox event, so I won't keep you much longer. Thanks everybody for joining us today. Like I said, we will follow up in an email. You'll have a link to the recording, the link to the folder. We'll try and drop it in the follow-up email as well, but it's in the chat. So save the chat if you have the option to, and that's there. And we'll see you guys at the next one, which is coming up on April 17th, same time, 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 Eastern, or I guess that would be roughly 4 p.m. British Standard Time for those in the UK or EMEA regions. Until then, thank you so much, folks. We'll see you all next show. And thanks again, Jesse. Awesome
Yeah,
stuff.
later, guys. Been
All
fun.
right. Cheers, everyone.